In the ominous summer of 1939, as war clouds gathered, the world reeled. Hitler and Stalin, sworn ideological enemies, struck an unimaginable alliance. This pact between fascism and communism not only redrew Europe but sparked World War II. What desperate gambit or shocking pragmatism drove this world-shaking deal? Before the astonishing pact, the European landscape was defined by an intense ideological chasm between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Nazism, with its fervent anti-communist rhetoric, and communism, advocating global revolution, were locked in a bitter struggle, reflected in pervasive propaganda and profound mutual distrust. This animosity, however, was exacerbated by the USSR's growing diplomatic isolation. Despite persistent efforts to forge collective security alliances with Western democracies against Hitler, these attempts largely faltered due to mutual suspicions and geopolitical complexities. Adding to this volatile mix were Western European appeasement policies towards Hitler, particularly at Munich, which intensified Stalin's deep-seated paranoia. He increasingly feared that Western powers might redirect Hitler's expansionist ambitions eastward, potentially forming an anti-Soviet front, leaving the USSR vulnerable and exposed. For Adolf Hitler, the pact was a monumental strategic move to prevent Germany from being caught in a dreaded two-front war. His sights were set squarely on invading Poland, and securing a non-aggression agreement with the Soviet Union meant he could strike swiftly and decisively without fear of a simultaneous conflict on his eastern border. This brilliantly neutralized the Eastern Front, effectively freeing up the mighty Wehrmacht to fully concentrate its overwhelming power on conquering Western Europe. With no threat from the East, Hitler could unleash his forces against France and Britain without diversion, a critical advantage Germany had historically lacked. Moreover, by stripping Britain and France of a potential powerful Eastern ally, Hitler hoped to diminish their resolve and ability to intervene effectively on Poland's behalf, subtly deterring their immediate entry into a full-scale war. This strategic imperative was the cornerstone of his immediate expansionist agenda. Stalin, harboring a profound distrust of Western intentions, viewed the Anglo-French appeasement and the failure of collective security talks with extreme suspicion, fearing he would be left to face Hitler alone. For him, the Nazi-Soviet pact was a calculated gambit to buy invaluable time. The Soviet military, severely weakened by his extensive purges of the officer corps, desperately needed to modernize and rearm before an inevitable clash with Germany. Furthermore, the pact's infamous secret protocols allowed the USSR to secure vital territorial gains, including parts of Poland, the Baltic states, and Finnish territories. These annexations were strategically critical, creating a much-needed protective buffer zone to defend the Soviet Union's western borders from future German aggression, a deeply pragmatic play for immediate and future security in an increasingly dangerous world. The critical failure of Anglo-Franco-Soviet negotiations in 1939 set the stage for this unthinkable alliance. Deep mutual suspicion, painfully slow diplomatic progress, and particularly Poland's steadfast refusal to allow Soviet troops onto its soil, a non-negotiable point for Moscow to genuinely deter Germany, ultimately scuttled any hope of a collective security agreement. When the Nazi-Soviet pact was announced, the world reeled in absolute shock and disbelief, completely upending established diplomatic norms. This sudden, inexplicable partnership between sworn ideological enemies sent shivers down the spines of global powers. Crucially, the pact immediately cleared the path for Germany's swift invasion of Poland, removing any fear of a two-front war for Hitler and irrevocably igniting the Second World War. This extraordinary pact was a purely cynical marriage of convenience, a pragmatic alliance utterly devoid of any shared ideological conviction. Both totalitarian regimes entered it solely for immediate strategic gains. Beyond the non-aggression agreement, robust economic ties swiftly developed. The Soviet Union became a crucial supplier of vital raw materials like oil, grain, and metals, which were indispensable for fueling Germany's rapidly expanding war machine. In exchange, Germany provided industrial goods and an invaluable military technology. Yet, this transactional relationship was inherently fragile, built on mutual suspicion rather than trust. Its violent dissolution was not a question of if, but when, ultimately exploding with Germany's devastating surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. In June 1941, Operation Barbarossa, shattering the uneasy truce and plunging Europe into an even bloodier conflict. The Nazi-Soviet pact was a cynical, pragmatic alliance driven by self-interest, enabling World War II. What does this reveal about the true nature of power in international relations? Share your thoughts in the comments.